Onward to the big news of this week, which was the Petraeus-Crocker Iraq hearings. The top general in Iraq, the top ambassador in Iraq, coming to Congress for a series of hearings in the House and Senate, followed by President Bush's wholly surprising announcement that he wants to keep troops there in Iraq for, I think it's ever. My favorite line in the hearing was from who has been dubbed by the great blogger Atrios, the last honest man, Holy Joe Lieberman. This is him in the Senate hearing on Tuesday.
Hey, let's be honest about this. The Iraqi political leadership has achieved a lot more political reconciliation and progress in September than the American political leadership has.
Stunning honesty from the last. I mean, obviously, the Iraq political system is running circles around this creaky American system. Hey, believe me, you know, American democracy has had better eras than the Bush era. But I think we have avoided sectarian violence in the American streets. We can at least say we haven't gone that far. But that is what the neoconservative movement has to do to damp down political calls for a fundamental change in foreign policy strategy. They have to pretend they have become smart enough to know they can't overshoot, usually. They know that things are difficult. They know it's a long road ahead, but we've turned the corner. Things are moving in the right direction. There's political progress. Can't you see it? Isn't it plain as day? But there were other moments in the hearing which I think are more notable but haven't gotten as much attention. Now, General Petraeus and Ryan Crocker, clearly, if you listen to their opening statements, there was underlying theme. I mean, the headlines have been that General Petraeus wants to pause the withdrawal, as if there ever was a serious withdrawal in the first place. It was merely just a recalibration after the so-called surge back to the massive troop levels that were there previously. But now he wants to slow that withdrawal process. I mean, it's all just, you know, dinking around the edges here. The bottom line is that we're occupying and they want to continue to occupy. The specific number of the troops is not really all that relevant to the foreign policy goal. More interesting to me in their opening statements was, to the extent they were touting how the surge has worked, they had to recognize that there was still lots of violence and problems, so they tried to blame Iran as much as possible. But in the course of the hearings, they got challenged on that. It wasn't like the last General Petraeus hearing where he was treated as some sort of demigod and untouchable, and politicians were afraid to challenge him for seeming that they were going to be seen as anti-American in some way. That shine had seemed to be gone. He wasn't treated disrespectfully. He was treated like a mortal, properly so, and appropriate to ask challenging questions to. So here's one example. Here, this is actually not to Petraeus. This is to the Ambassador Crocker. This is Senator Obama pushing him on the Iran question.
If, in fact, it is known, and I'm assuming you've shared this information with the Maliki government, that Iran's government has assisted in arming special groups that are doing harm to Iraqi security forces and undermining the Iraqi government, why is it that they're being welcomed the way they were?
Well, we don't need to, again, tell the Prime Minister that. He knows it.
Okay.
And is trying to take some steps to tighten up significantly on the border. In terms of the Ahmadinejad visit, you know, Iran and Iraq are neighbors. A visit like that should be in the category of a normal relationship.
Now that really undermines the attempt to blame Iran for everything. Now, what Obama and Crocker were referring to came up earlier in Barbara Boxer's questioning. You know, the Iranian president, Mahmoud Ahmadinejad, who we should stress is not the leader of Iran. The president is not the leader. The supreme leader is the leader in Iran. But nevertheless, Ahmadinejad did visit recently and got, in Barbara Boxer's words, the red carpet treatment. He was not treated as an enemy. they need to have some sort of diplomatic negotiations over. He was treated as a friend. And that's because Iran has influence with a multitude of groups and organizations and militias, some militias that are opposing the militias that we're supporting. But Iran is playing all sides of the fence there. So it is far from true that it's some sort of simplistic equation where Iran is on one side and we're on the other, and therefore we're in some sort of proxy war. It's a far more complicated situation than that. And if you're going to try to blame Iran, and so as Petraeus and Crocker were trying to say Iran is trying to undermine the Iraqi government there, as Obama and Boxer point out, well, the Iraqi government doesn't seem to see it that way if they're feting him when they visit. And mind you, Crocker after that then went into his various litany about, well, they met Ahmadinejad, but they're doing all these awful things, funding these so-called special groups, militias that are attacking the people we like. But earlier in a previous hearing, in that morning, this is Senator Jack Reed from Rhode Island questioning Crocker on that point.
Ambassador, is the Mahdi Army and the JAM the only Shia organization that is receiving assistance, cooperation, has significant contacts on a routine basis with the Iranians?
I don't think so, Senator.
Who else might be having that kind of contact? If not military training, then a dialogue, money moving back and forth for other reasons?
Those are two different aspects, and I'll address them separately. There are other militia groups down in Basra, and a militia organization called Tharullah, the Vengeance of God, whose leader, incidentally, is now in detention. They almost certainly get support from Iran, as does something called Iraqi Hezbollah. That does not necessarily imply a connection to Lebanese Hezbollah, but again, an extremist militia. Iran has the tactic, as we've seen in Lebanon, of supporting a number of different.
Would that include the ISKI elements, Bada brigade?
I'd put that in the second category. Iran has a dialogue with, again,
everyone in the Shia community,
right?
And it's a mutual dialogue,
and not just the Shia community. What has happened with the Supreme Council and Badr is that they've basically gotten out of the overt militia business. It's now the Badr organization.
Now, there are a lot of names being thrown at you out there. Let me try to clarify this a little bit. The Mahdi Army and the JAM. The JAM is just another way to say Mahdi Army, and it's the Arabic acronym. Those are the folks that are controlled by Muqtada al-Sadr, which the Bush administration says are the Iranian-backed folks that we're fighting against. At the tail end, they're talking about the Badr brigades. Badr brigades are also a militia that are aligned with Maliki, the prime minister of Iraq, that we say are on our team. At the very end, Ambassador Crocker says, well, they're no longer in the overt militia business. As Spencer Ackerman wrote in his Washington Independent blog, we had him on the show a couple weeks ago, bravo, they're now a secret death squad instead of an overt militia. Well, that was worth 4,000 lives. So you still have militias on both sides of the equation, and as Jack Reed pressed, and as Crocker acknowledged, Iran's talking to everyone. So it is not the simple equation where in Iraq we have a good guy versus bad guy situation, and we're on one team and Iran's on the other. Iran is spreading the wealth around. And furthermore, when Crocker talked to Senator Obama, he acknowledged that's perfectly appropriate for Iraq's government to meet with Ahmadinejad, the president of Iran, who is not the leader of Iran, that's the supreme leader, the Ayatollah, but he's still an official of the Iranian government. He's saying it's appropriate for them to have that relationship. It's appropriate that there's going to be some Iranian influence in their neighboring country. But if that's true, and it's okay in our eyes for Iraq to meet with them, then the question then becomes, well, why is it not okay for the United States to have diplomatic relations with the Iranian government so we can actually resolve these issues and get full cooperation from Iran to stabilize Iraq and not have this sectarian violence. That's the dangling question that Petraeus and Crocker could not answer and could not square what they'd said about diplomatic relations with what they were trying to do in their blame shifting. But it's good that you and I know what's really going on there, because the folks that want to gin up another war with Iran are still agitating, and I think they have a friend in Mr. McCain over there. This is the Liberal Oasis radio show. After the break, we'll be talking to U.S. Senate candidate Ed O'Reilly going up against John Kerry in the Democratic primary. This is the Liberal Oasis radio show. I'm Bill Scher on WHMP News, Information, and the Arts.